Hello, everyone. So, I'm going to talk about how I used the Force to quit smoking a little over 7 years ago. In fact, I can almost place it to the day, September 4th, 2015, because that was Force Friday, the first Force Friday launched by Hasbro as part of their toy marketing campaign. And so instead of buying a pack of cigarettes, I bought one of the new toys. Captain Zuvio was the only thing left on the shelf. So I got Captain Zuvio. And boy, was I excited to see him appear in the first movie, The Force Awakens, when it finally did come out a couple months later. Quick edit. And it turns out the first figure I bought was Finn, followed by a couple of Hot Wheels, and then it might have been Captain Zuvio after that. But the first figure I bought in my journey to quitting smoking was indeed Finn. And I may or may not have had 1 or 2 or 3 more cigarettes left that Saturday, the next day. There may have been some slight overlap. But the point was, I decided that since Hasbro was going to start launching new toys and creating a whole new line of 5 points of articulation action figures, that I would start collecting again. And I could divert the money that I was spending on my cigarettes into toys instead. Now, I'd been a casual collector my whole life, particularly toys and Star Wars toys. But I've also had my Star Wars collection wiped out a couple times from various misdeeds. So what you see in my collection, in my Instagram posts and in my YouTubes and behind me is largely what I've collected over the past decade. Now that may sound like a long time, but keep in mind I'm 47. And I quit smoking about 7.5 years ago. I didn't really start collecting toys in earnest, like actively going out and seeking them for an extended period of time until I quit smoking. Now, in the 90s, I did collect very fervently the Power of the Force revival for the prequel movies. All of the characters in that first line are completely roided out. It's hilarious, but I still love that line. In fact, that C-3PO from that line is probably my favorite C-3PO. After a while, the market became so flooded, I realized I couldn't keep up and I had other interests, and I didn't really follow through the whole trilogy. It was the first movie, and I still collected a little into the second movie, and by the time the third movie came out, I was doing a lot of other things and wasn't really in a place where I could be collecting. So years and years and years passed. Meanwhile, at age 20, I had started smoking cigarettes. I smoked then for almost 20 years. And I tried to quit many times. I did quit a couple times. I quit for about 6 months once. I quit because a friend of mine was going to be a father. His wife was pregnant, so he was going to be a father, and he wanted to quit. So in solidarity, I quit with him, and I found it remarkably easy to do when I had kind of a purpose in mind. But I have to admit, it didn't take, and there's something called the pink cloud in addiction. The pink cloud is this area you reach when you think you've beaten whatever you've beaten, and you feel really good about yourself. This definitely applies to cigarettes. It's really easy for the addict to get comfortable with having overcome their addiction, allegedly. And they're on this pink cloud a couple of weeks, maybe a month after they've quit, and maybe even a few months after you've quit, especially with something as potent as cigarettes. And then someone offers you a cigarette or whatever it is that is your issue. And you think, well, I quit. Obviously, I have this under control. I can have one. I'll just have one. It's not like it's a relapse. It's just one. That's what a relapse is. Sorry. That's what a relapse is. In order to quit, you have to quit, especially with something like cigarettes. You go out drinking with some friends at a bar. Someone offers you a cigarette, and you say to yourself, oh, I guess I got this. I can have one. And no, maybe some people, but most people, and I'm one of those most people, you can't. You can't just have one. And then you're back to buying a pack, and then you're back to having a half a pack a day. And that's where I was at, a little bit over a half a pack a day, probably about 12, 13 cigarettes a day. So I worked out the math on that. I've never had a lot of money. And so cigarettes are a significant bill. You know, if you think about it that way, like it's a utility bill you don't have to pay, because anyone who's smoked for a significant period of time knows that very few of the cigarettes actually give you any kind of kick or any kind of lift anymore. They just kind of ease the need for a cigarette. It's basically like a utility bill for a utility you're not getting. And I started to think about it that way. I was like, well, I'm paying probably $60 to $80 a month on cigarettes, and I'm struggling some days, you know. So why am I paying this much money and it's not helping? So I thought, well, it won't help my finances to just quit, because I've tried that just to like tell myself I shouldn't spend this money, and that's not enough. But if I told myself that you can't spend that money on that and spend money on toys, like you got to choose. And that's what it came to for me. I did choose. I started collecting toys. So I hadn't really been collecting toys until Force Friday, September 4th, 2015. I was going to be 40 in a couple months, and I realized I needed to quit. It'd been about 20 years that I'd been a smoker, and I needed to quit, so that's when I decided I'll divert all my money. I'll start spending my money on toys instead of cigarettes. I reasoned that if I was a half a pack a day smoker, then I was smoking I was spending anywhere from $15 to $20 a week. That's about $60 to $80 a month. So initially, that's what I gave myself. I gave myself $20 a week. Or every couple days, I would go into a store and maybe spend about an hour hunting different places and just looking for something small. I knew I couldn't spend much because I had a budget for the week. So I would buy those little Hot Wheels cars. They were only like $3, $4, and that way I could buy like 2 or 3 of them in the week, and that would be my cigarette money. And it kept my mind occupied. I was thinking about toys and looking up toys and checking values of toys. By the way, that's another thing to keep in mind. As much as I love having all of these toys, they're not tremendously valuable. I do have some valuable toys. I'm a collector after all. I've got some really nice things that I'll be showing off in other videos, and I have shown off in other posts. But mostly what I have is things that I've collected through going to various department stores and just checking out their sales. So after 7.5 years, you don't have a pile of ashes, which is all you would have if you had been smoking that whole time. After 7.5 years, what you have is a pile of toys. You have Lego sets, and you have jumbo-sized TIE fighters, and you have aliens, and you have Fisher-Price figures, and you have jigsaws, and you have every toy that you really wanted, because all you had to do was not spend it on cigarettes. And here's the real kicker. As much as I was seriously addicted, half a pack a day isn't even that much. I know other people who smoke easily a pack a day. And that was 7.5 years ago. The price has even gone up even more. So if I was spending $60 to $80 a month on my half a pack a day habit, then someone who is smoking a pack a day is spending or smoking about $120 to $160 a month. And that's a lot. Some people are smoking 2 packs a day. That's a lot of money. That's $200 a month you're spending on cigarettes. And at the end of that month, you have a pile of ashes. If you spend that money on toys, you have toys. For the most part, I open my toys because I recognize they're not really worth that much. They're definitely worth more than a pile of ashes, and that's all that matters to me. I can resell them at 1/4 of the value, 1/10 of the value. It's still more than a pile of ashes. And I have a lovely singing voice now.
Well, my mama said...
Pollen definitely makes it a little rough and raspy sometimes, but there's a lot less coughing now, and a lot more money, a lot more toys, a lot more happiness now that I've quit smoking through the power of the Force. Thanks for watching. I hope this is helpful. If you're still a smoker, consider spending your money on toys instead. And if that's not going to work for you, think of it another way. Find something you're passionate about. Find something that you love more than anything. For me, that was Star Wars. As ridiculous as that is, that was Star Wars. And the intersection of Star Wars, toys, and capitalism, addiction, that's how I found my cure. Maybe that'll work for you. Thanks for watching.